Good morning. Welcome to Community Church Unitarian Universalist. I am your worship associate, Bill Rochelle, and it is a joy to be with you today. Community Church is a progressive, open-minded, and inclusive religious community. We welcome all who are on a spiritual search for truth and meaning. Ours is a faith in action as we do the work of social justice and elevate compassion in our quest to live ethically, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every being. Please look to your weekly email for announcements. We are delighted to welcome Alicia Cooke to our pulpit today. Alicia is a high school social studies teacher with a varied background in healthcare policy, community organizing, and climate justice advocacy. She has been a member of CCUU since 2013. You can read all of her sermons at aliciacooke.substack.com. We would like to welcome any new and returning visitors today. We hope you will stay after the service for refreshments and fellowship. In the spirit of fellowship, please turn to your neighbors, especially those you may not know, and say hello. Good to see you again. We have one announcement this morning from Alicia.
Good morning, everyone. So some of you may know tonight at 7 p.m. right here will be a memorial service for Dion DeVille, former member of this church, beloved past president of this church as well. So there will be a remembrance followed by a reception, 7 p.m. tonight.
Quick announcement. All right, good morning. This just came up. Y'all will notice in the fellowship hall a whiteboard, and on the table there's a very homemade piggy bank. Anyway, you know, they're phasing out pennies, right? So we thought that you give us a penny and you give us your thoughts with the penny. We're not going to give you a penny for your thought. You're going to give us a thought and a penny. So anyway, so bring in your pennies. There's little stickies. You can write a thought down, or, you know, a wish, a hope, something, and stick it on the whiteboard, and we'll just see how this goes. It's just something fun. Okay, thank you.
So I once again did not meet the deadline to choose opening words before they had to print the order of service. And I think that was meant to be because it allowed me to accommodate my last minute deep dive into Iranian poetry last night, for quite obvious reasons. So Bill will actually be sharing one of those poems during our Joys and Sorrows. And I want to start this morning with a poem from the great Sufi mystic and Persian writer Rumi. Not Christian or Jew or Muslim, not Hindu, Buddhist, Sufi, or Zen. Not any religion or cultural system. I am not from the East or the West, not out of the ocean or up from the ground, not natural or ethereal, not composed of elements at all. I do not exist, am not an entity in this world or the next, did not descend from Adam and Eve or any origin story. My place is placeless, a trace of the traceless, neither body or soul. I belong to the beloved, have seen the two worlds as one, and that one call to and know. First, last, outer, inner, only that breath breathing, human being.
It is our ritual to light a chalice, invoking hope and eternal truth to our worship. Please join us in singing the words of chalice lighting, "We light this flame." The words are printed in your order of service.
Our first reading today is from Thomas Berry. It's all a question of story. We are in trouble just now because we are in between stories. The old story, the account of how the world came to be and how we fit into it, sustained us for a long time. It shaped our emotional attitudes, provided us with life purpose, energized action, consecrated suffering, integrated knowledge, and guided education. We awoke in the morning and knew where we were. We could answer the questions of our children. We could identify crime, punish transgressors. Everything was taken care of because the story was there. But now it is no longer functioning properly. And we have not yet learned the new story.
Now is our sacred time of joys and sorrows. If you are online, you may write your joys and sorrows in the comments section to be read aloud. In person, you may write them on one of the cards being passed out by our greeters. Please remain seated as we sing hymn number 112, "Do You Hear?"
So we'll just start off with, I suppose, an acknowledgement about recent events. This comes from the Iranian poet Gurus Abdulmalekian.
He stirs his tea with a gun barrel. He solves the puzzle with a gun barrel. He scratches his thoughts with a gun barrel. And sometimes he sits facing himself and pulls bullet memories out of his brain. He's fought in many wars, but he's no match for his own despair. These white hills have left him so colorless, his shadow must stand up to fetch him water. We ought to accept that no soldier has ever returned from war alive. Okay. I have a sorrow from Lorraine. My daughter's dad lost his fight with addiction and is no longer with us. A sorrow that war and violence is still being called a path to peace. That's from Jim. A joy. Jada celebrated her birthday on Friday. Wish she were here with us this morning, but her bus broke down. Concern and distress over continued ignoring of our Constitution and theater of war. Oh, threat, I'm sorry. May our strength be with the people of the Middle East as they defeat the evil imperial Zionists. From Liz, please pray that I have the strength and courage I will need as I leave tomorrow to say a final goodbye to a lifelong friend. And from Joel, a joy to be home after a very enjoyable trip to Morocco, and a concern. Our Rambo-in-Chief seems determined to start World War III. Our country is becoming more like Morocco, has a parliament, but king has the final say. And we light 2 more candles. It's almost like I've done this before. We light 2 more candles, one for the joys still bubbling up, too new to share, and one for the sorrows that we cannot yet put into words. Know that we hold you in our hearts. Now let us pause for a moment of silence, recognizing the joys and sorrows of those in our community, spoken and unspoken.
So clearly a lot of sorrow this morning, and clearly there's reason for it. And I hope this reading helps. This is from The Optimism of Uncertainty by Howard Zinn. I have tried hard to match my friends in their pessimism about the world. Is it just my friends? But I keep encountering people who, in spite of all of the evidence of terrible things happening everywhere, give me hope. Especially young people in whom the future rests. Wherever I go, I find such people. And beyond the handful of activists, there seem to be hundreds, thousands more who are open to unorthodox ideas. But they tend not to know of one another's existence, and so while they persist, they do so with the desperate patience of Sisyphus, endlessly pushing that boulder up the mountain. I try to tell each group that it is not alone, and that the very people who are disheartened by the absence of a national movement are themselves proof of the potential for such a movement. Revolutionary change does not come as one cataclysmic moment, but as an endless succession of surprises, moving zigzag toward a more decent society. We don't have to engage in grand, heroic actions to participate in the process of change. Small acts when multiplied by millions of people, can transform the world. Even when we don't win, there's fun and fulfillment in the fact that we have been involved with other good people in something worthwhile. We need hope. An optimist isn't necessarily a blithe, slightly sappy whistler in the dark of our time. To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, and kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we only see the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many, when people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act, and at least the possibility of sending this spinning top of a world in a different direction. And if we do act, in however small a way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite succession of presents. And to live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is itself a marvelous victory. So there was a time in each of our ancestral histories where our lives did not extend much past the confines of the village. One day resembled another. Our tasks of waking, sleeping, hunting, gathering, farming, cooking, eating, and caring hardly varied from one day to another, or even from one generation to the next. Meanwhile, in other corners of the world, full wars and revolutions and disasters and heroic stories would play out, reshaping landscapes and societies, all passing entirely unobserved by our ancestors in the little village. When I lived in a remote corner of West Africa without electricity, there were still some remnants of this. It wasn't uncommon for my neighbors, especially women, to have never left the village in their lives. From neighboring villages, people would come to stare unabashedly at me, a lot of them never having seen a white person before. I regularly made children cry. The US was more of a concept than a real place to them. I was regularly asked how long it would take to get there by car, and what it was like to hang out with George W. Bush. And although in 2005, we all heard a passing note on the radio about a hurricane that struck New Orleans, it hardly registered. And it didn't affect our daily life in our little corner of the world. The week I left that village was the same week that the first person there got a cell phone, and the rest is history, or if you prefer, globalization. Today, about 4.9 billion people own a smartphone. TikTok has 1.9 billion monthly active users worldwide. Instagram has 2 billion, Facebook has 3 billion. It's harder to count traditional forms of media available, but for global TV channels, I've read there's anywhere between 4,000 and 25,000. Newspapers, it's almost impossible to say. Some people say maybe 11,000. News websites, I don't think anyone's tried to measure, but there are over 1 billion websites on the internet. There's about 44,000 global radio stations and about 4 million podcasts. Not 4 million podcast listeners, 4 million actual podcasts. All of these connections form an ever-tightening web that include nearly every single person on this planet. Our little village has grown. So there's a classic dystopian young adult novel, which has become a staple of English classes everywhere. And I taught it about 10 years ago when I was at a different school. In Lois Lowry's book, The Giver, The people long ago made a choice to opt out of the dizzying ups and downs of life. They've carefully engineered a society in which they live in literal black and white, a flat sameness. By design, their climate is always temperate, and their daily lives are predictable and unremarkable. Everyone has enough to eat. A well-managed, pragmatic system pairs husbands to wives and children to parents, avoiding any pitfalls that might come with leaving those decisions up to chance, or worse, up to emotion. An effective pain medication exists and is immediately given for any injury or unpleasant feeling. There are no books allowed, because there's no need to think independently in a community where all your choices are preordained. And after some years, at an appointed time, each person is honored for their life in the community and released into death. Like the landscape that allows the residents to pedal their bikes without any effort, life is just flat. It's devoid of deep emotion, devoid of surprise, devoid of any uncomfortable sensation. There's only one person in the community who is exempt from this. In the event that they are someday needed for their context, all of the memories of life in the world before the Great Flattening are archived and stored, and not on a disk or in cabinets, but in the mind of one person in the community called the receiver. The receiver alone remembers what war is, or heartbreak, and he alone knows the sharp pain of hunger or a broken arm. And throughout the book, the reader is meant to understand that his life is intensely difficult because he is the one who carries pain on behalf of the entire community. So Lois Lowry wrote that book in 1993, which was really right on the cusp of the internet becoming the internet. And in those very early days of the internet, that fate that she assigned to her character was understood to be unusual, extraordinarily difficult. And I don't think she had any idea of knowing that we were really all headed toward that same fate. Today, we are all the receiver. In a globalized world with 24-hour news networks and constant access to the internet, we see all. Everyone's joy, and everyone's pain. Not as a united or linear story, but as a billion little dramas playing out at the same time. Absolutely everything, everywhere, all at once. And God help you if you idly check your notifications during a slow moment at work and accidentally witness a murder by the state's secret police force. Try proceeding normally with your day after that, but you've done that. You've been asked to do that, and you're asked to do that sort of thing all the time. A famine here, an earthquake there. Waking up to see that your country and its ally bombed a school in Iran and killed dozens of small children. Appeals for help on social media in 100 languages, and all of this just screaming at us from these little computers in our phone. It is honestly and daily absolutely shattering. In the same way that we were never designed to manage the information overload of the digital age, we were never meant to fully see and try to hold the suffering of the entire human race in our hearts. We are all seeing and all knowing, and the tragedy, of course, is that we are not also all powerful, omniscient and omnipresent without being omnipotent. Yet we are, at this point in human history, far too interconnected to ever opt out of this extraordinary global story. The information that we consume and the products that we buy, the people we vote for, the entire retirement plans that we invest in, the neighborhoods we settle in, will always ensure that our lives are bound up with others on this planet. And there's no going back from that. There are some who try to insulate themselves from the sharper sensations of the world. The super rich build underground bunkers or try to lay claim to Mars. The slightly less rich have to settle for gated communities and NIMBYism. But I think the most common way that we fortify ourselves against the pain of the world is through the art of storytelling. They wouldn't be at that immigration facility if they hadn't committed a crime. If they had just come here legally. My ancestors came here legally. And those citizens who were shot, well, that's what happens when you interfere with law enforcement. I heard she had been following them around. I heard he kicked a tire. I know the story. And I know you all, and I know those stories probably don't personally resonate with you, but we all tell ourselves stories out of self-preservation. Other people are helping. The other side will wake up soon because no one can possibly deny the truth now. The midterms will fix this. It is in God's hands. Years ago, I read a book by Joanna Macy and Chris Johnstone, whose subtitle speaks volumes. The full name of the book is Active Hope: How to Face the Mess We're In Without Going Crazy. The book was written through the lens of the climate crisis. And unfortunately, we do not talk about climate change in this country anymore. We just do not. But really, the framework is applicable to any communal crisis we face because, after all, they're all facets of the same crisis. Macy and Johnstone identify three major stories that shape our time, and you can see them on the cover of your order of service this morning. The first story, which they term business as usual, is the head in the sand one. It views the trajectory of the world as primarily positive, its resources infinite, and the quest for convenience as supreme. And I know people who have bought into this story completely, and I think some of you all have too, and I don't know how they do it. It's a tempting story, but it's not a sustainable one. The second story is the great unraveling. And in this story, our eyes are wide open, or you might say too open. And this is the story that I suspect many of us carry with us too often, that everything is falling apart, that evidence of global collapse is everywhere we turn, and that we have no choice but to watch it all happen as we sit by powerless. I think most of us oscillate between these two stories. The pain of the great unraveling pushes us back into the far more tempting business as usual until we remember we don't actually believe that story, and then back into the great unraveling we go. But then maybe we come to that third story, the great turning, which Johnstone and Macy also call the essential adventure of our time. In the great turning, we reject both the status quo and our despair over it. We engage in life-saving actions and build new sustainable practices that serve all the Earth's people. We build deep connections with each other that take hold like tree roots and which pass on values that live beyond us. I'd like to see these stories as a linear process over time, where we begin with business as usual, we become awake in the great unraveling, and then we finally meet our happy ending with the great turning. But I think it's more accurate to recognize that we slide back and forth between these stories nearly constantly over the course of a lifetime, or even over the course of an afternoon. For example, if I didn't have just a little bit of business as usual in me, then I don't know how I would do my grocery shopping or my laundry. And in the great unraveling, I stay close to the source of my humanity, and it provides me with a good cry every once in a while. And in fact, at any given moment on this vast and varied earth, there are chapters from each of these stories which are playing out simultaneously. So let's return then to the treatment of migrants in our community. We could look away. We could count on our skin color or our citizenship status to keep us safe for as long as possible. We could simply trust that our government will handle things professionally, by the book, and wash our hands. If the issue still nags at us in the news or in our conscience, we might console ourselves with the idea that others who know better are helping, or that this all has to blow over at some point. And that's our business as usual path forward. In another version of this story, we can choose not to turn away. We can watch every video of an abduction on the street. We can watch every interview with a distraught relative, read the devastating statements from people who have been in the detention camps, read, maybe even argue with every comment under an immigration story on NOLA.com. Can you imagine? We can get in the weeds researching what we are defunding in order to fund this. We can contemplate where in the world we're headed next. And we can dwell in this story of the great unraveling until we can no longer bear that pain. There is yet another version of this story. And here in Louisiana, it involves lawyers and advocates and some congresspeople and outraged Americans flooding their representatives' offices and daily pop-up protests around the city. I know you know that part of the story. What you might not know is the part that even I know just a few bits of myself. It involves late night planning over encrypted text threads, a network of people living in the deep red communities of central Louisiana who travel to and from detention camps, who open their homes to migrants and cook them food and arrange their safe journeys home to their families. These are the people who dwell in their own version of the story of the Great Turning. I got to know some of them over the summer, and someday, when the place we live in is different than it is now, I hope we can unmask those heroes, and I hope we will all know their stories. What's your great turning? In the moments when you feel a glimmer, when you feel like maybe everything's going to be okay, who are the characters in your story? And what are they doing? And that's different for everyone. So I think it's really worth sitting with that question for yourself as opposed to me just telling you what that might look like. So again, I'm going to ask, in your great turning, who are the characters? What are they doing? Marching or meditating, praying, suing, cooking, painting, teaching, reading, writing, laughing, building, resting, dancing, organizing, calling, posting, singing. Which of these acts is bringing you closest to a story that you can read without looking away, that lightens your heart and prepares you to meet the moment? Let's return to our village. So much new pain came with opening up our village to 8 billion other people. The village now contains immeasurable sorrow, yes, but it also contains immeasurable abundance and joy, more than there was before. Absolutely every single person who will ever make a difference on this planet lives or will be born into your global village. From thousands of miles away, you can watch what they do to bring about the world they want to live in and the world we all need to live in. And of course, you can participate and you can be watched and encouraged by thousands of others from afar as well. The great turning is, after all, the essential adventure of our time, and it's not much of an adventure if you don't take part. We cannot shut out the pain of the world. We cannot unsee horrors across the globe, often inflicted in our name and with our tax dollars. And we can't pretend we don't know what we know. Yet if we must see every single story, let us choose the ones we will give oxygen to. Until you discover the great turning, you will be caught in a loop of business as usual and the great unraveling for essentially your entire life. But we can find stories that sustain us without lying to ourselves and without hiding from the pain. How lucky we are to live in a time when we have access to so many beautiful stories. May your story sustain you and bring you joy. May it sustain others and bring them joy. And may your story weave with mine, and together may they turn and turn and turn the world around. Blessed be.
Community Church Unitarian Universalist is a self-sustaining congregation. Members and friends' generosity help us do the sacred work of bringing justice, spirituality, and compassion to our community and beyond. You can give online, by text, or in person this morning. See the information on the back of your order of service for giving by text. And the hymn for the offertory is 159, This Is My Song.
Where is it? All right, sorry, y'all. This is my song, all the nations, a song of peace, all hands are for this is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my glory shine. Lord over hosts, in all the lands amazing, thoughts and dreams, as true and hard as thine. My country stands stronger than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and vine. Those over lands, the sunlight through and bright, and suns are everywhere as blue as sun. Oh, hear my song, the God of all the nations, the Son of peace, for their land and for mine.
Our benediction comes from the co-author of Active Hope, How to Face the Mess You're In Without Going Crazy, Joanna Macy. There is so much to be done, and the time is so short. We can proceed, of course, out of grim and angry desperation, but we have received an inestimable gift to be alive in this beautiful, self-organizing universe, to participate in the dance of life with senses to perceive it, lungs that breathe it, organs that draw nourishment from it, is a wonder beyond words. It is an extraordinary privilege to be accorded a human life with self-reflective consciousness that brings awareness of our own actions and the ability to make choices. It lets us choose to take part in the healing of our world. That our world is in crisis to the point where survival of conscious life on Earth is in question, in no way diminishes the value of the gift. On the contrary, to us is granted the privilege of being on hand to take part, if we choose, in the great turning to a just and sustainable society. We can let life work through us, enlisting all our strength, wisdom, and courage so that life itself can continue.
Please join us, stand as you are willing and able for our closing hymn, number 193, Our Faith is But a Single Gem. Please remain standing for the extinguishing of the chalice. We extinguish the chalice here, that it might flow gently in our hearts. May it guide your path as you leave this place. May it light your way until we are together again. Please join us for refreshments and fellowship in the fellowship hall.